Greetings, everyone. This is Kevin Sue, and with us is Vex, one of the most active modders in the Slay the Spire scene, responsible for developing many mods, including the Bandit and the Locksmith. Vex, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Alright, so this is the Thornton. He's like a sort of a challenge character, was the idea. I thought it'd be funny to have a character who just didn't make any sense living in the Spire. Like, why is he here? It doesn't really. It's just kind of silly. So I kind of designed a gold-based character whose theme is like he's just an ordinary businessman. The name just kind of came out of nowhere. I was in Italy at the time on vacation. I'm Italian. And so I basically just spent, I think it was just one day where I made almost the entire character. One day of just completely eating 3 pizzas, actually, and just completely coding the entire thing straight through with no breaks. The thing with the Thornton is that he starts with the normality curse, which makes him just incredibly weak. His strikes deal 5 damage instead of 6, and his defense gain 4 block. So he's just completely, like, very, very useless in the start of the game. The Thornton's main stuff is getting as much gold as possible, amassing business cards and investment. They're basically items that, well, not items, cards that give you relics if you play them enough. And then running away, which is like some cards will say run, and if you run X amount of times, you'll win the combat. And then the number of times you have to run to win the next combat goes up by 1, making it more difficult. If you run away in a boss fight, instead of automatically winning, it just deals damage based on the enemy's health. But run, for the most part, either you're going to take like 1 run card like I am and just use it as like an ace in the hole during a bad situation, or you want to go full run and just pick up only run cards and make like an entire run deck. You can usually bring things down to either business cards / investments, running around, or grabbing as much gold as possible.
Is the Thornton balanced?
No. Most of my characters are balanced, the Thornton is not. You can argue that he's balanced against the player because almost all runs are losses, but the wins are crushing because usually you find some ridiculous combo between multiple cards that just kind of destroys the entire game.
Did you put any secret Easter eggs or hidden features in this mod?
There are a lot of Easter eggs. This card is called Hexaghostify. It starts in your discard pile, and it turns the enemy into a Hexaghost.
Why? 10 HP.
10 HP. It keeps HP in all buffs, and that's where you get a lot of the Easter eggs. If I use this, for example, on the Awakened one, and it'll keep the buff that lets the Awakened one revive when he dies, so the Hexaghost will come back when it dies in this spooky extra boss form I made. Same thing with Darklings. If you Hexaghostify a Darkling, you'll get a Darkling that revives. If you Hexaghostify the Heart, you get like a 999 health Hexaghost. What is it? Oh yeah, Slime Boss. The Hexaghost will split. So there's a lot of cool stuff like that.
What are the benefits of turning your enemy into the Hexaghost?
The Hexaghost doesn't do anything turn 1, so if you can kill him on the next turn, you're golden. It's basically a stun with extra steps. A lot of extra steps. Also, just in general, Hexaghost is an easier boss than, for example, Donu and Deka. Like, you want to get rid of one of them. But probably the most dependable card is just Scaling his Win. It's just a very, very bad version of Demon form, and yet it's still really good because scaling is winning in Slay the Spire. Poking fun at how usually to win in Slay the Spire, you need something that gives you a continuous increase in power.
And you made this mod all by yourself?
Yeah, totally. Almost all my mods are all by myself. I got the art from a friend of mine named Lyman. He's still on the Slay the Spire Discord, I believe, but hasn't been around in a bit. I'm no good at art, as you can probably tell, from all the art on the cards.
They are, they're interesting. Have you made the most mods out of anyone in the Slay the Spire mod community?
Yes, I have. Yep, by a very large margin. At this point, I think it's around by 8 mods, maybe 10. And that doesn't even count all the unreleased mods I have, which is a solid amount. And not to mention that I also do mod commissions where people pay me with their mod idea, and I'll make it as fast as possible and ship it off to them.
How much do you usually charge for a mod commission?
Depends on how difficult the idea is, obviously. I used to charge less, but nowadays I would say, I mean, not that I used to charge less and then I raised it up because I'm greedy, just that it takes a little more time for me because I'm busier. So I would say around $200, probably, for like a character. Usually I do characters. That's more fun for me, I find, is doing other people's characters because there's a little more personality put into that than just adding relics or other little tweaks.
Other than the commissions, do you collaborate with others often?
I worked together with Michael on Downfall. That was my most recent thing. I don't usually collaborate. Because for me, like, modding is basically mostly for, like, the personal expression of making something.
You've developed a ton of mods. When putting a mod together, what is the most challenging aspect for you?
Usually, if I plan out a mod, I will fail. So I do much better if I have, like, a spur-of-the-moment inspiration and just do the entire thing in one short burst like I did for Thornton and Bandit and a few others. If I try and think too hard, I'll just end up making something that feels kind of inorganic, like it has the exact same ratio of cards as the previous ones, a lot of the exact same ideas, just modified a little. So it's really something about more having that kind of inspiration for me and charging forwards. I would say code, it really isn't that difficult for me anymore. I have it at the point where I can basically make a card in 5 lines of code, just because everything else can be boilerplated. Design can be difficult, but usually it's just finding something that I feel is fun, and then from there going and just kind of following the fun through that. Like, what's most fun from this? Oh, that will be fun if it can interact with this. When I'm developing a mod, I'll try and do 10 to 20 runs as them each day that I'm developing.
Wow.
Which usually, and then if I see, like, what I'll do is, well, I won't complete the runs. I'll play until I see something, and then I feel like that's not right. And as soon as I see that, I quit out of the run, I abandon it and lose. Go into the code, fix it, and then start a new one from the start. So it takes ages of, like, starting round 1, this doesn't feel right. Start again, round 2, doesn't feel right. Floor 7, nope, back to the start. Floor 10, back to the start. Until I can finally complete 5 runs in a row without finding anything bad. That's when I'll consider it balanced.
So you must be really concerned about balance in general for your mods, and I guess you sort of lean a little bit on the harder side?
Yeah, I like to have a solidly difficult experience. Basically what I go for is giving the player the opportunity to screw up. And Thornton kind of has the same thing with, like, the betting system of having a lot of cards that give you just gold or relics without actually contributing to the fight. If you take too many of those, you'll just draw those and no damage, and then just get destroyed by the enemy you're fighting while you're trying to build up. So, like, just kind of having a little bit more give and take. Because I feel like Slay the Spire, a lot of it is like a betting sort of game system. Even like in the early stages, should I play more defense than strikes on this turn? Do I gamble on killing him next turn, or just defend for now and save more health for later?
Do you ever get burned out?
Oh, definitely. I think so. I finished up the Problem Sleuth, and I was like, "Ooh, I should make something new." And every time I tried to make something, there wasn't anything to follow. So I took a really long break. And then I finally hit upon the idea from the Bandit, which got me back in again. The Bandit is a lot more concrete of a character than the Thornton, a lot less, like, out there with random ideas. It's definitely gotten the most positive feedback from people, which I'm happy about, because it's definitely, I would call it the best mod I've made. So when you start the round, the board appears, and your character gets, like, launched into it. So not only are you fighting the monsters on the regular board, on the regular game, but you're also playing inside of this board game with all sorts of different spaces that have various effects. So, like, there's the go space, which you start on, and whenever you land on it or past it, it deals 10 damage to all enemies. So that's kind of like your main impetus for going around the board. And then there are positive spaces, like applying weak, drawing cards, vulnerable, block, special spaces that, like, let you do cool rare effects. And then there's bad spaces like lose energy, take 6 damage, shuffle slimed in. So you've got, like, this entire board dynamic on top of the usual Slay the Spire dynamic, which I'm really happy with how it came out. If you hover over a card, it'll show you how far you move.
So this board is entirely random at the beginning?
It's completely random with some specifications. You always get, I believe, around the same number of positive and negative spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 positive, 4 negative, 1 rare, and then the rest are empty. It used to be a lot more packed, but a lot of cards add new spaces to the board, and I wanted to have more space for that.
Was programming the board into the game pretty difficult?
Oh, it was extremely difficult. I would say that was probably one of the most difficult, well, not too difficult, but it was like one of the most new things. Like, a lot of modding, since it's just modding, I would be honest and say it's not very difficult. unless you're doing like stuff like what Kyo does, where it's literally making the entire mod system. But just kind of modding Slay the Spire is a really easy way to learn Java and just kind of get into basics. And the board was one of the first like from scratch things I made, where it didn't really hook onto any of the original systems. It was just completely new and added on top of the game. So it was pretty difficult. I would say like 2 of the 5 days that I spent making Bandit, really, like code-wise, were the board. And the board honestly wasn't in very good shape until recently. It worked, but it was a lot uglier. My friend Rasputin on the Slay the Spire Discord, I don't think he's been around lately either, but he made a better version of the board, just kind of improved some of the graphical looks and added some new stuff and sent it over to me eventually. And I was like, oh my god, wow, I can't believe I didn't think of any of this. So yeah, I updated it a bit ago to make it way better. The hardest thing was probably just making the graphics work. A lot of the time, like getting the actual board to work in the back end wasn't so difficult, but getting the board to look good in the front end was a lot more difficult, because trying to make it so like the piece moves the right amount of distance to the next space when it moves. I ended up figuring it out, but there was a lot of times where like you'd move 2, and then your playing piece would just kind of go off the board on the right side of the screen or something. Yeah, so you've got a lot of different archetypes and stuff to go for with the Bandit. Boom Smack, which adds kabooms, which I stole the bomb art from Hearthstone. If you ever played that game, there's an archetype which consists of putting bombs in the enemy's deck that when they draw them, they take 5 damage. And I would play as Rogue and Shadow Step the enemy that does that over and over until their entire deck was filled with bombs and they just blew up and exploded, which was quite fun. And I wanted to replicate some of that, so instead you shuffle the kabooms into your own deck, and they're just, when you draw them, 5 damage to all enemies, and you draw a card. The other ones are going around the board as fast as possible, which is just go fast. It's good to go fast. And you usually use that to go... The go space will give you more damage the more you go around it with some of the cards, and you can just go around and around and around so fast that the go space annihilates the enemies. The other one would be filling up the entire board with positive spaces, so every time you move, you get a bonus. Here's a fun card for that. Immortalize. You draw 2 cards, and then 2 random spaces on the board become spaces that also play those cards.
Was the Ghost Space kind of inspired by board games like Monopoly?
Yeah, it was inspired by Monopoly. Originally, there wasn't a Ghost Space, actually, and I thought, why not add it as a gaming reference? And then also... why not also add it? Because what I was realizing as I played more was that it was actually beneficial not to go around the board most of the time. There are a couple of cards which let you go backwards or activate the space behind you, and usually the overwhelming strategy back then was to come up to a space that was strong, like the space that gives you 1 strength, and just stay right there and move forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and just repeat it over and over. It just serves as a reason for the player to keep wanting to go forwards rather than ignoring the board system entirely.
Do you think that the modding boom is coming to an end or slowing down?
Yeah, I would say that Slay the Spire is at the end of its life cycle in terms of like it had a big boom and it's still doing really good as a game. There's still a lot of new modders and stuff, but like it's not on the new page of Steam anymore. New mods don't get much higher than like 3,000, I think. I think the release of Downfall, at least for me, symbolizes like finally kinda like I'm gonna start fading out from modding from here, I think. Like the community has settled down to the people who are going to keep playing with it, and everyone who isn't and was just buying it to like play it and then move on has moved on. I really like most of the people in the Slay the Spire Discord. They're all just generally really like the people in the modding chat. I mean, I don't talk outside of the modding chat. I think I might have posted 1 message outside of the modding chat 1 time, and I never ventured back out. But the people in the modding chat are just generally really nice and funny people to talk about anime, modding sometimes, but mostly anime. Just basically all anime. It's an anime chat. But yeah, they're all good people. I've really enjoyed chatting with everybody.
Vex, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us about your mods.
Yeah, no problem. Good time.
And I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors and your future mods. I look forward to seeing them.